It's the double feature no one saw coming.
And I know what it means if the Nazis have a bomb.
Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's epic about the creation of the atomic bomb, going head-to-head with a movie that could not be more different.
And this morning, specifically, we're talking about the trend Barbenheimer. You might have heard of that. It's been pretty big because of two movies that were recently released on the same day, but polar opposites.
Yes, so it was the Barbie movie and then Oppenheimer.
Yes.
You saw Barbie yesterday.
I did.
I saw Oppenheimer yesterday.
It's just so weird, Brent, that we're even talking about those two movies in the same breath. I get it, and it makes a good portmanteau, to do Barbenheimer, but they're so different. But they're both really breathing life into theater chains. I'm just hoping it's not the last hurrah because of the strikes.
I am become Kino, purveyor of films. Hi, welcome back to the Harbor. I'm your host, the Kino Cowboy. I'm back with Scott.
And I'm Scott, the Kino Kid.
That's your bit.
That's my bit.
Okay.
We were out at the movies late last night, folks.
Yeah, we were. Holy shit. We did the whole Barbenheimer run yesterday. Kino Patrician holiday that people were looking forward to. So much so that it almost wore out its welcome because the last 2 days leading up to it, the memes had gotten to corporate accounts and even senators and stuff. And I was like, oh,
Senators?
God. Yeah. There was some.
It got out of hand. The memes got out of hand.
But it was getting close to where people were gonna start hating it.
Right. And
that's just what the internet does,
That's what the internet does to every joke. It runs it in the ground, arrow in the knee, what have you.
That's a real shout out.
that ran into the ground within 48 hours. That was amazing. It is an interesting thing. We can talk about first of all, you and I discussed, should we even do this episode because so many people are doing some sort of Barbenheimer thing. But then we decided, we saw the movies and we need content, so we might as well talk about it on the mic. And that's about
everyone loves content.
Content. We do, man. We got to keep feeding the algorithm, the algae rhythm.
It is just an interesting thing that this happens, and
it happens, but also I find it interesting that you talked about the corporate appropriation of the meme. Because Barbie, not Oppenheimer, but Barbie is an almost corporate apologist movie in a way. Mattel pretty much admits it has contributed to overconsumption and body image issues. And I don't even know if they say plastic pollution, but plastic pollution and all sorts of other things. And I don't know, does that absolve them of their sins? Does that make them a cool woke company now? I hate saying that, but because I'm not Ben Shapiro or Ron DeSantis.
That's the thing. You can still comment on these things and it still be valid and not I don't know. Greta Gerwig is an auteur director and she wanted to make a Barbie movie, and it's better that she made it than anyone else, because I told you guys last night, imagine if this Barbie movie would have came out in 2005.
I thought that during the movie.
Different kind of fucking corporate movie this would be, just shitty rewrites, shallow plotting, for little kids.
It would be Charlie's Angels or worse, Starsky and Hutch, but worse.
Cat in the Hat, which
Cat in the Hat.
People love and consider it an experimental film in some communities, and
people also love Tank Girl in some communities, and we just covered how mediocre that was. Stretching it out for 20 minutes of commentary.
I just think of all the mediocre kids movies from the 2000s that were churned out just to, And it's cool that we got Greta Gerwig to make a movie that's like artistic and meaningful, and it's not the gender politics are not actually annoying at all.
The gender politics, I said this in the theater yesterday as we were standing up. It took the positive aspects of modern feminism and excised all the chronically online annoying bullshit and the vociferousness that online discourse contains. And I think because it was written with a husband and wife team, yes, because Greta and Noah Baumbach, yes, that you actually do get the sense of this is a movie about feminism, but it's also about the liberation of gender in general. And it does stay pretty much on the gender binary because there's a lot to talk about just there. And if you want to read between the lines with trans feminist ideals or whatever, be my guest. But I think it does also talk about how men equally through kin are not defined by their relationship with women or their domination with women or the stuff that they have. And that it's a joke, but at the end of the movie, Ken is wearing a shirt that says, I am Kenuff. But I think that's almost a thesis statement of the movie. At the end of the day, despite Barbie being an incredibly materialist brand. But then again, is it Mattel trying to be cool? Or are they just like, this is going to help our brand no matter what, so we don't care what kind of commentary?
Well, that's like the comments I've been saying are like, how did Mattel approve this script, et cetera, et cetera? And I think they just want to be on the cool end of it, you know?
Well, and also here's the thing, and they acknowledge this is part of the plot of the movie, is that girls don't play with Barbies as much anymore.
Yeah.
Dolls in general, but definitely not Barbies.
Yeah.
My niece doesn't play with Barbies. She plays with other toys. And they thought, well, sales of Barbie are going down anyway. This movie can't hurt. You know, there's no way this movie can only. They're aware enough that this movie can only help their brand.
This movie domestically made $150 million in 3 days.
Yeah, so it already made back its budget in just domestic box office tickets alone.
It made as much as Dial of Destiny has made in 3.5 weeks in 3 days. I think that's the thing. That's the important thing about Barbenheimer. It's showing like studios were tired of all the sequels and reboots.
Well, here's the thing. People keep saying that Barbie is definitely based on a brand.
Yeah.
But like, I think if anything, it's showing, well, if you're going to have a corporate product movie, like a, Garbage Pail Kids movie or whatever.
Oh my God.
At least make it an auteur project or let, because I'm sure this isn't purely an auteur project. It seems like Greta had to assemble a team, a crack team of production designers, dear God, production designers,
of course,
and props people and everything, to make this vision. And so it obviously it's not purely an auteur film in that sense. $150 million budget, although this has a pretty big cast. Not as stacked as Oppenheimer. We'll talk about that, but
yeah, but it's like, it's interesting that like the hype surrounding both of these movies as like a double feature started over a year ago when it was announced they'd be on the same day, and it started as like just a fun little joke of like these two opposite movies, let's watch them to get back to back. But then it kind of expanded and became this kind of like, we're at a place progressively for a lot of people where we've come to a spot where it's normalized for men to not have to be overly manly, or they know what their masculinity means to them. It has been heavily normalized in society lately, and of course, so that became the fun of it, of like we want to see Oppenheimer and Barbie equally because they're both made.
We saw a bunch of teen boys yesterday wearing pink shirts. Granted, they were also hanging out with girls wearing pink shirts, so they probably have ulterior motives. But
masculinity has changed for the better so much over the last 10 years that if this would have came out in the 2000s, it would have not had the same, this meme wouldn't have existed.
Oh no, the quadrants would be different completely.
Yeah, and it would be completely
This
different.
is like a 4-quadrant movie. Barbie is a 4-quadrant movie. That's weird.
Yeah. And it's very cool to see like because then the memes started like flipping and like doing the thing where it's like the masculine thing to do is to see Barbie, and like you're going to Barbie for the thought-provoking existentialism, and you're going to Oppenheimer for fun. That became like the kind of joke it became. And I don't know, it's just refreshing to see. And it's wild that Greta Gerwig has become a household name because of this phenomenon. And she obviously had presence because of Lady Bird and Little Women, but this has definitely expanded that big time.
Right. And I'm a fan of Lady Bird.
And this is the biggest domestic opening for a female director of all time. So
really, I believe it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense
in that regard.
Yeah, it's Barbie, of course it is. And these are both very existential films. There are similarities between the films. They're both. I saw one critic say they're both about the Anthropocene, or how we're in like late stage capitalism destroying the planet. They both have those undertones. Of late stage capitalism, kind of postmodernism, looking back both on historical events and recontextualizing them, minus the propaganda, and also recontextualizing consumerism, and what it means to be a consumer.
Yeah. And there's so many ways that Barbie could have like fell flat in that regard.
We could have another tank girl on our hands.
No, it's like obviously you and I are men, and there is going to be a slight disconnect just automatically in certain areas just because we are men. That doesn't mean...
But that's also how women feel watching a lot of movies.
Because my fiance Parker, she has to kind of sit on stuff for a little while, and then it's usually the next day she wants to talk to me about it. And she was talking about what the movie meant to her as a woman, and she said it brought up a lot of surprising feelings of mom issues that she didn't expect it to bring up. And then she found the ending very beautiful, which I did too. But she also noticed a detail I didn't notice. She said at the end, when Barbie's in the real world, like she becomes a real girl, a real woman, and she steps out of the car and she's wearing those Birkenstocks. I didn't notice this, but the Birkenstocks were like millennial pink. And so Parker was like that. She thought that was a powerful image of her being able to compromise and have both the pink and the Birkenstock. And that was a nice little kind of way to wrap up the film. And I was like, yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. And I don't know. And I do like, she also said that not enough movies touch on codependency issues and kind of normalize that, which I did agree on.
No, because I think a lot of movies encourage codependency through the traditional Hollywood romance, and it's all about falling in love, but it's not about having a healthy relationship. So then the idea of what love is pushed in media as this insane, the sort of codependency you have at the beginning of a relationship when you're like feeding off each other's chemicals and stuff, and that's supposed to stabilize. But because we don't see a healthier version of it, it's good to see that deconstructed through Ken's simping. And it does acknowledge that men, I like, it's weird for men. I'm going to say this, and don't take this out of context.
Okay.
Love and horniness are two sides of the same coin. Okay. And I think a lot of men, there is this perception of like they're a bunch of horn dogs, but there is in men also the same desire to be held and be loved. And a lot of it's not knowing how to express that in any other way.
And some of that to me is like commentating on how, like I said earlier, like masculinity has progressed in the last 10, 15 years. Of only recently have men had help really figuring out how to separate certain feelings and ideas when it comes to love and their identity as a man.
Right.
because a lot of the time people men want to stuff those kinds of things down and not talk about it, not go to therapy. You know, Tony Soprano brought forward the idea of it being manly to go to a therapist, and that was only 20 years ago. You know, like,
Yeah.
it's like, obviously women have the short end of the stick with society and how the world has treated them and how they've been brought up, but I like that the movie does say, hey, you know, men have their issues and problems too with their identity, and they are also equally valid in those.
No, and I still think it's centered on the female perspective primarily, but that's the thing, and that's something I think people don't understand about feminism and gender studies or women's studies, wherever you have them, is that it is really supposed to liberate everybody from gender roles.
Yeah.
So they can choose what aspect of their gender role they want to enact. And I can find ways of being masculine or being a good man without, you know, drinking beer and pounding snatch or whatever.
Yeah, or you don't have to adhere to any of that.
Be a bro.
It's beautiful.
Although to be fair, Ryan Gosling looks cut as shit.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Like, getting in the shape of his life to play Ken is fucking baller.
He looks so dehydrated. His abs are just popping out all the time.
But that's the sad thing is the people I see that come out of this movie thinking that this movie's anti-man. And I'm like, did you not pay attention? Do you not have any sort of literacy at all?
They want it to be anti-man. They want to see it as anti-man. That's all it is. And a lot of it's creators trying to flare up their stupid fan base.
Yeah.
And trying to flare up a fan base of people who didn't see the movie. That's what they're counting on as well. People not seeing the movie. Or seeing it once it's on streaming and then only half watching it while the rest is through their phone on their texting.
Well, I saw one critic who I wouldn't have assumed would be that kind of have that sort of thought process, but this critic said Ken is just like, he has total like low testosterone in this movie and stuff. I'm like, dude, Ken is the one who came back and was like, yeah, we have to fucking take over this place and be men. Like, how is that low testosterone?
Yeah, look at his abs.
Because he has fucking feelings. He has low testosterone because he has feelings.
He is whipped. But that's portrayed as unhealthy, though. It's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Who said that? What critic was that?
I don't even remember, honestly. It was just someone on Twitter. But then you have like, yeah, I don't know. I think Barbie is an important movie. And
I do too.
I'm glad people might say it gets a little preachy, but I think at this point it's fine for them to directly say this is what the movie's about, because
and I do think there's gonna be 13-year-old girls seeing this movie, and you know, you got to be a little more blunt with them maybe because they're 13.
Yeah.
If you want to communicate a theme, you got to be like, all right, here's what's happening. And that's common in literature. My example is always Shakespeare. At the end of a play, he'd just straight up be like, and here's a monologue explaining the themes of the play. And Julius Caesar.
And
like,
you can do that totally works because, well, obviously they have that little girl in the movie too to serve that role, obviously. But Parker's friends, Lauren, said one of her friends was like, messaged her of why Barbie's bad for girls and all this stuff, and it was like these long paragraphs, and she's like, I'm not reading all this. But they were like,
the movie or the doll?
The movie. And the mom was like complaining that they would like reference a gynecologist at the end, and that ties in to me to 2 episodes ago when we were discussing about fucking how the Puritans have ruined America. No, just that ties back into like, why are these touchy subjects?
It's the doctor. The doctor is it's a medical doctor.
Yeah, it's not like a gynecologist is sexualized in any sort of way. What, because women having a vagina is sexual to you?
No, it shouldn't be, you know, and hopefully male gynecologists, there aren't that many, or they're gay.
You don't want your 10-year-old to know about gynecologists? That's so fucking
They should. They're 10-year-olds. I mean, you know, if they're old enough to bleed, they're old enough to read about
Okay.
gynecologists. Okay.
No, I even like because my Parker's friend Lauren has like a kid who's like 8 years old, and she wouldn't have any problem with her kid knowing what a gynecologist is. The little girl is gonna grow up and she's already asking about periods and stuff, and that's normal. Why is this such a weird thing? And that goes into like we were like, did this movie have to be PG-13? And I think in America it does have to be PG-13 because of suburban fucking moms.
Right. And I think so. The problem with PG-13 is it kind of made PG a weird. I feel like if this had come out in the 80s or 90s, maybe it could have swung a PG.
Yeah.
I think something like Goonies is worse than this.
Yeah.
But people are sensitive. The rating system is weird and stupid. Americans are prudes. I'm sure. Heck, it might even tell me what the ratings are in other countries.
I was like, okay, there's the joke where she says, I have a vagina, and kid's like, I have a penis. It's like, okay.
I mean, yeah,
those are just medical terms. Like, it's a funny joke, but it's like, it's just medical terms. It's not like they say pussy and cock. Like,
yeah, and
or he says,
I mean, and it's PG. It's PG in Canada and Australia. In some other places, it's like 12, 13. In the Netherlands, it's 9. That's funny.
That's a weird rating.
That's just a weird number, but I can't get it. It's like E10. It's like the Shadow of the Hedgehog.
E10. I can say damn and hold a gun. Yeah. And there are the scenes where Barbie gets catcalled, and some of the comments they say are pretty crass. But
yeah,
that does go into like, I don't know, it's good to use that as an example for little girls and say, hey, this is what you might have to deal with, it might get worse as you're going through puberty, and it's a thing women do.
And Margot Robbie feels vaguely threatened just walking down the street. Here, I will say one thing about that movie. LA is a crazy town, and if you saw 2 people on the beach dressed like that, roller skating, nobody would look twice. Nobody would care.
I would look twice because they both look sexy.
Yeah, that's what it would be. Nobody would be making fun of you.
Yeah,
people would be like, "Oh, dang, that couple in like their matching retro costumes are so cool."
Yeah, I'd be like, "Dude, that's fucking 90s throwback. That looks cool as hell."
There's people, in LA, homeless people everywhere. People rolling blunts on the bus. Like that's not gonna phase anybody.
They were at Venice Beach. You and I have been to Venice Beach.
Yeah, there's weirder people than that.
For sure.
I was in Southern California a couple months ago. It's weirdos.
I'm sure there will be discussion of like, it does stick to the male and female binaries.
It does, but I think that was intentional, and I think that was a question of scope. And some people can criticize it as heteronormative. And there's also definitely the idea of like, what if Alan is coded as a gay a little bit? Michael Cera's character. I could see somebody arguing that, I guess. I don't know. According to his gay stereotype.
I don't think he's a gay stereotype. I think he just doesn't fit in with the kids, and that's okay. I think that's a good thing to point out. Like, just because
Michael Cera's weird, but I like Michael Cera.
Hell yeah.
He has this niche in Hollywood, being him.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the way that the makeup on him makes him look so weird, though. It's so funny. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, he's good as Ellen, and he does show up at the end with the rest of the Barbies, hanging out with them. And I don't think that means he has to be gay. And in fact, I'm
saying I could see some blogger arguing.
I can see people trying to code him as gay, but I think it would be more important to show that you don't have to be gay to want to hang out with the Barbies rather than the kids.
Or maybe he's asexual.
Yeah, or it doesn't.
Or maybe he's something else. I don't know. But I do think it is a question of scope, because it's like, well, let's talk about the male and female binary, and then maybe things that fall in between those two nodes kind of implicitly. But I guess you could make the argument, like, if we open this up to every possible gender combination or shade, we only have an hour and 50 minutes of runtime.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that might be part of it.
And But you, even if you're non-conforming, non-binary, trans, whatever have you, you could still get plenty out of this movie.
No, I think so, absolutely. Just if you're aware of, because I do think at the end of the day, it is about self-love, you know, and being able to express yourself without having to rely on externalities, whether that be your relationship with the opposite sex or the same sex even, or with material things or with your job, you know, and how identity is multifaceted and there are multiple selves. So that doesn't directly apply to queer studies, but I think the sentiment and the themes definitely do.
Yeah. And yeah, what's funny is Parker, she kept being proud, telling me like, I never cut my Barbie's hair, I never lit them on fire, I never marked all over them and ruined them and stuff like that. And I told her, I was like, to me, this movie says like, you know, it's valid if you want to be creative and do that kind of crazy shit, because that quote unquote weird Barbie is just as valid as the rest of the Barbies. And that's
Yeah,
kind of
she's like the wise old sage.
Yeah.
Who helps them out. She's the Obi-Wan of this.
That's what I like about that movie.
Also,
too.
I like Kate McKinnon. She's cool. She's funny.
And I feel like the movie maybe could have delved into the mom and her daughter relationship just a little bit more.
I think that was a weak part of the movie, is that those characters felt underdeveloped.
Yeah, but it's still a successful film, I think.
No, absolutely a successful film. And I'm glad, even though it's branded, that a movie like this that is a spectacle but does have practical effects, it doesn't have a ton of action. I mean, it has some chase sequences, yes. Sorry, I'm trying to plug in my ring light.
We don't need action sequences in a Barbie movie.
Oh, there's chasing.
I know. I'm
but
just
it's
saying.
comedic.
But like to me, like, yeah, my favorite sequence was the Kins dance sequence at the end.
Great, when they just pull a like Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, I just like how it's choreographed. Felt like old Hollywood. I don't know, it worked for me, and I was just basking in like
they're hot.
Yeah,
they're hot abs.
Shang-Chi
and Kay from Blade Runner fighting.
Like, okay, Reddit moment. No, but you do get that like it's a popular joke these days, a meme, I guess, if you will, to kind of distance yourself from like the thoughts of death. Like, I don't know, everyone thinks about death, but it becomes a meme of like, I can't do this because I'm alone, depressed, thinking about death. We're constantly having to joke about our severe mental illness and depression as millennials and Gen Z, because that's the problems we face.
Well, no, and it's because of it's social media, and then also just climate change and the news and politics. I feel bad for kids growing up these days, dude. I don't envy them at all.
No.
I would not want to be born any later than I was, for sure.
So of course, like, this movie almost kind of plays on that, like having a Barbie dance sequence and then her saying, "You guys think about death." That's going to be a very popular kind of thing for younger folks.
Yeah, I think younger folks do fetishize their mental illness a lot, but
also
not that this movie does.
But the movie does bring up enough to where I think it's very successful to do that kind of thing in the way of the way that it would appeal to younger folks, to bring up these topics.
It has a healthy view of death, I think.
Yeah, it does, definitely. And I think and she sits on that bench with the girl, or the old lady, and that old lady, I didn't realize, Parker told me, but that's the actual girl that Barbie was based off of, the real one.
Oh
yeah. So that's got a extra layer there, but it's, you know, Barbie
saying that she's beautiful.
Yeah. So not only we get to see that, but also we get to see Barbie like look at someone's like they're aging, and I'd never seen anything like this before, and someday this person will die. Like, I don't know. It gets a little weirdly profound for a fucking movie about a fucking doll. Like, it's weird. And
I guess part of what helps with this branded movie is that Barbie doesn't really have lore you have to stick to.
Yeah.
So once you put Barbie in the movie, you can do whatever you want. And the idea of Barbie Land in the real world, it's on the nose, but of like an imagination land type thing. But it's simple enough, but also flexible enough where general audiences would jump on. It could have been done a lot worse.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
No, it's a movie I don't plan on seeing it again in theaters. Probably, just because there's other things coming out and I got other things to do. But it's something that if I did rewatch it, I'm sure I would gain more things out of. I'll rewatch it in like a year or something.
I'll be rewatching it at some point soon.
I'm sure.
But I really like the surrealist elements. Like
it's so hyper real.
And I like when she goes into that weird room and it's the creator of Barbie and she has that nice conversation.
Oh yeah, they joke that
that gets kind of art housey for a second.
It does, and then Will Ferrell jokes like, yeah, she has an office on the 17th floor.
Her ghost, yeah.
Her ghost has an office on the 17th floor.
Up, dude. No, but and then when you get to the end and she takes that walk with the creator of Barbie, we get like the patrician art house kind of ending for a second, and it's awesome. And like she really gets to, they give us a montage of like little girls growing up and stuff, and it's just like you sit there and kind of bask in it, and you do not expect this level of like emotion to come from this, and here it is, and she still wants to become a real woman that's going to age and one day die, and she's more than any of these ideas. She's herself. I don't know, it's fucking awesome. And it got me thinking and existential in a way that Oppenheimer did. And
no, it is, again, both of them are very existential movies and ultimately about mortality.
Let's talk about Oppenheimer
in the human race.
Which is funny because
definitely one I need to see again.
We definitely both need to see it again. But our first thoughts we talked about in our little clip. But it's funny because we did this opposite in this right here, kind of. But the argument was, do you watch Oppenheimer first, then Barbie, or Barbie first, then Oppenheimer? And a lot of people were trying to say watch Barbie first, then Oppenheimer. I disagree.
I disagree as well. And I think, here's the thing, I do think it's important to get lunch or something in between.
Which is what we did. We had several hours, like 3 hours, which is important.
That was very important.
I wouldn't want to go straight into Barbie after Oppenheimer. That'd be way too much.
I wouldn't be able to think. I wouldn't be able to focus. I'd be thinking about Oppenheimer.
Yeah. Because Oppenheimer is unlike any biopic I've ever seen in my life. Anything like the way it's presented and edited is unlike anything I've seen in that kind of for a drama, a biopic set in World War II. And at first you have to kind of get used to it. You're like, what the fuck? Because every scene's like 20 seconds. It almost plays like a montage for like the first whatever.
No, it really forces you at the beginning to get accustomed with non-linearity. Because he throws linearity out the window, which most biopics, they might have sort of like a frame narrative of them as an older person, then it flashes back and shows their whole life beginning to end. This completely throws out linearity. Which by doing that with the editing, which is some of the best in recent memory, you're able to use juxtaposition to juxtapose seemingly disparate things, his love life and the creation of the bomb, and then how that relates to other characters by jumping around so much. And it is difficult to follow. Part of it, don't worry too much. And he does have sections of the movie in the black and white to show they're in a more recent, not modern day, but a more recent in the 50s and not the 40s sort of timeline.
Yeah.
And this is a very heavy movie. I liked the first half, but then everything from Trinity onward is masterpiece filmmaking.
Yeah, it's really like once you hit that sequence, first of all, not even counting the Trinity sequence, everything else in the movie, the way it's edited makes it more exciting than a lot of the blockbuster superhero movies that are coming out. And this is a biopic about a scientist in World War II.
It's this movie is very intelligent. It's called Oppenheimer for a reason and not Trinity. You know,
Yeah.
I keep coming back to that because the only way to wrap your head around these, like whenever I think of the scale of World War II in its entirety, I can't wrap my head around it. It's impossible. I can't. 60 million people dead. I can't even imagine that number. I can't. The only way to do that, to study the Manhattan Project, the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, is to scale it down and have Oppenheimer himself as a vehicle, in many ways for the American experience. And you could probably argue we're in a post-war on terror, post-Afghanistan society now, which turned out great. But you could even argue that this is tapping into the zeitgeist because America is looking back at its military-industrial complex and wondering how much of that in American imperialism has, how much has it helped? Has it been justified? Like some people argue the bombs were, or that certain, war on terror, whatever have you. Or is it something that, despite being one of our strengths, is one of our great weaknesses as a country, is our reliance on our military might, especially since World War II. It brings those questions up. And I think that's one reason that taps into the zeitgeist, whether people realize it or not.
And I think it was inevitable. I'm still upset that it happened. It's inevitable with media literacy these days, but I'm seeing people say, like, why is this glorifying a white man who created a devastating terror of force of nature, this and that? I'm like, did you not watch the fucking movie? Where did you get this from?
They're calling him, like, from the first 10 minutes, people are calling him full of himself and overconfident and brash in his scientist nerd ways. But yeah, they admit very upfront that, this guy's kind of an ass.
Not only that,
he's an incredibly complicated man.
Yeah, and like, did you not pay attention? Because the scene after, once he learns about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and he goes to that rally to speak or whatever, that's one of the most horrific scenes I've seen in recent memory. Like, it actually made me almost like teary-eyed because it was so disgusting.
Horrifying. That's one of the best subjective POV scenes I've seen recently, because it so firmly puts you in the psyche of a man dealing with post-traumatic stress that he wasn't even there for, but it still traumatized him, because he can't handle the guilt and is trying to justify it.
Yeah. And then the scene with Truman, dude, oh my god.
Yeah, and I still disagree with getting Gary Oldman, a Brit, to play the American president, but he did a good job.
He did a great job.
On a philosophical level, I disagree with it, though.
Like, obviously he's got major guilt and talks to the president and about the future of what this bomb.
Truman's just like, you're a poon.
But also it's complicated because he knew if he didn't do it, someone was going to build this bomb for America. We were going to do it. But also, he knew in the back of his head the whole time he was making this bomb what it would be used for. So that's what the film explores.
And he did, when they started building the bomb, the Nazis weren't out of the race yet. They weren't until the bomb was already made.
Yeah.
So
that's the brutal part.
He thought we have to beat the Nazis.
The brutal part is, like, the Nazis had already surrendered by the time they were finished with the bomb.
And they're like, well, let's use this.
Let's use it.
And I obviously saved American lives. There's easily an argument to be made that, like, more lives were saved from the atom bomb, and that by people seeing the destruction, and the movie covers all this, that it did act as a deterrent.
Yeah, but like, I saw some people say, oh, this movie's bad because it doesn't have any Japanese people in it, and it doesn't show Hiroshima getting nuked. And I'm like, that's not the point of the movie. This movie is about Oppenheimer.
Yeah, it's called Oppenheimer.
And
33 hours.
Yeah, but also we don't need that at all. He didn't watch it. He didn't watch these people get blown up. He did. You see his reaction to the photos of the aftermath, and that's enough because it's about him and his fucking horrific cosmic shit that he's brought into the universe. And to me, the scene when they're in the room just casually deciding the fate of two cities is disgusting enough, and more disgusting than actually seeing the bomb go off to me.
No, because it doesn't glorify war, which is hard to do. I mean, there's an argument that no matter what you put on to celluloid, it will glorify it. It will make the image cool by projecting it onto a screen, and that's not something good to do for war.
And the fact that Kyoto was spared only because the guy had been on vacation with his wife. That's disgusting.
Which, it was funny. People in the theater laughed, myself included, but it was a dark laugh. It was a nervous laugh.
It's a dark laugh, and that is totally valid, but to me, it made me sick to my stomach.
No, it's because it's so absurd.
It's way more
so
powerful
believable. And there is, I think, from propaganda value, it's good to not destroy Kyoto, I guess, because I don't remember why they picked Nagasaki and Hiroshima. I mean, it's the right size, the combination of military and civilian targets, I guess. They gloss over that some in the movie, and this is a very masculine movie.
Yeah, and
I think obviously it's not the feminism or gender studies aspect of this movie is not in the forefront as Barbie is.
No.
You cannot help but talk about, I mean, women back in the 40s obviously were in the back. There's women scientists in this movie, and they're criticized, and they're saying we don't know the effect of radiation on the female reproductive system and all this stuff. I do wonder how many of the people on this project got cancer. I think they already knew that you got cancer from this stuff by then. Marie Curie had already done her thing. They used to just x-ray you without putting any like shield on you or anything.
Yeah.
We don't know what this does. Here, we'll x-ray you while you drink water to watch it. But there's this idea of, let's take Picasso for instance, who was also in this movie. He's sort of a contemporary. He was a predecessor of the modernist and leaning into the postmodernist era of, well, everything. But and that's all tied in actually, because the breaking apart of communication systems with the radio and later television, and the breaking apart of art and perspective with movements like Cubism and other modernist and postmodern art movements, and also the deconstruction of what we see in the physical world and physics relating to quantum theory as we understand more and more of what the world is made out of, and confirming atomic theory and more details about it, which is insane because we take it for such granted now, but that's such a huge paradigm shift that I can't imagine living through. But it is able to tie those together. My point is, Picasso is one of those who would use up women as inspiration. He would romanticize them, but then use them up and abuse them and cast them aside when he was done with them, sucking the life out of them for his art. And although she had obvious problems, Florence Pugh's character, whose name I can't remember. There's so many characters in this movie.
I know, so many.
But the communist chick, what's her name? Florence Pugh. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Anyway, she kills herself because, and that weighs on his conscience, but also it does talk to the egotism of this time of thinking you can get away with cheating. He even jokes at one point that with another more minor character we meet later, he's like, well, no, her husband didn't ever find out or something. He is almost snarky and proud of it even after everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's because gender roles were more strict. People just used to cheat. They didn't talk about opening it up or having swinging or having threesome. People just cheat all the time. So there's definitely that role, and there's plenty of gender things to latch on
and
to.
Emily Blunt having to stay home with that annoying ass baby.
Yeah, dude. And Emily Blunt, I mean, being a accomplished biologist, but once she has a kid, she has to abandon that all for her genius husband, who is lauded,
And that's the thing is like Nolan has been criticized over the years for not having strong development of female characters in his films, and I can agree. But this movie, in a weird way, is better than usual,
I think
despite
so.
the women being cast aside or whatever. That's so on
Because
purpose
it's
for the
acknowledging
character.
that the women were cast aside historically
Yeah, exactly.
versus the script itself, like Cobb's wife just being sort of a plot device through Marion Cotillard,
Sure,
for
yeah.
example.
And so and it's just like it's just a weird thing that's like it's this movie that actually serves I don't know women better than any of his other movies, despite the poor display of the shit they have to go they go through or whatever. I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah, Florence Pugh is like she's only in like 5 minutes probably of the movie, and she's like naked for like 80% of that. So I could see some people maybe pushing back on that, but I don't know. He
It
was
has a
naked
purpose.
too, and also it's like it's not sexy when you see her riding him, and it's in that kind of surreal sequence in that.
When Emily Blunt is watching Killian and Florence bang, and it must
Yeah,
have been the most awkward thing to film.
in that room with all the other people, dude, that is horrifying. And
All right, Florence, Emily stare into each other's eyes as Emily dry humps, or as Florence dry humps Killian.
yeah, that's brutal. And that's like he's never had like sex scenes like that before. And for Nolan to be like, yeah, I'm gonna have a sex scene in this movie, but it's gonna be very uncomfortable and horrifying is honestly pretty baller. And I'm glad he
When he's quoting the "I am become death, destroy your worlds," and she inserts him while he's reading it.
yeah,
That's intentional.
That's intentional. I don't really know what
He's
exactly
giving
he's going
birth
for.
to destruction.
Yeah.
And that's a very destructive relationship. Also, I think it just connects the male ego plus the male ego / sexuality / urge to reproduce, to create, to establish one's ego, to establish one's legacy. It's all connected.
Yeah.
So I
sure.
think this is very much an examination of male ego, acknowledging that, because I think you could have made this movie you didn't have to wait till 2023 to make this movie. Technologically, it wouldn't have been as good. You could have made this movie in the 80s. You could have made a version of it.
Yeah.
I think absolutely. There's even it is very, don't take this too literally, but it's like, okay, the flashing when it's showing him thinking about atoms and stuff, and it has all those what looks like atoms and sparks flying around. That's practical effects. You could do that a la the Stargate in 2001, have a bunch of colors and stuff on screen. But I think what would have happened if this was made in prior decades, it would have been more of a hagiography for Oppenheimer, hailing him as a genius, or maybe having the other slant one way. And it would not have this level of nuance because we did not have this level of nuance in the culture about what masculinity is and the myth of male genius. Because obviously Oppenheimer is obviously a genius, or at least this movie leads us to believe. So not surprising to me. I'll consider him a genius. He's Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Or even before I saw this movie, I didn't know a lot, but I was hedging my bets that dude's probably pretty smart. But
yeah.
There is the idea of like he did have all these other people. It's the same thing with the president. People who act like the president controls everything, or even things like filmmakers, or Phantom Thread's actually a good example. If you want to, I don't know if you've seen that, but that kind of breaks down the Daniel Day-Lewis plays a fashion designer, but also a lot of what he does is sketches, and then women are the ones who like make it all together. So there is this like everybody needs somebody to hang on to because the entire Manhattan Project as a whole is too large. That in order to give it historical context, you have to narrow that scope.
Yeah, you have to. And like there's so many moving parts, moving cogs in the way of these cogs being characters that
I honestly, there were parts of the movie where I was really almost struggling to keep up with everything going on.
It's
by the end of the movie, he ties it all together.
It's like the most fast-paced 3-hour movie of all time. Like,
yeah,
it's just every
you can
little
tell.
moving part is like, okay, this character connects to this character, and this character connects to this character.
If it
And
had
then-
been 30 minutes longer, I could have seen it. I mean, like I could see it being 30 minutes longer for more detail and giving it time to breathe. But you can tell they cut every frame they could. And I'm sure the studio was like, Chris, we can't
Also, I
have
think
all
it was an
3 hours.
artistic intentional
I think it
thing.
was.
He
I
wanted
think it
it
was.
to be presented in this way, an almost abstract level of editing and cutting that creates this sort of like blanket of film that just works.
Right.
And
almost like an Oppenheimer staring back, life flashing before his eyes.
yeah, almost. And
Dreamlike
it does
quality.
the first like 20-30 minutes it does start to slow down after that and
Yes, thankfully.
and get more, I'm not gonna say coherent, but I'm just saying like for a first time watch, it's like holy shit.
No, I'm looking
Slow
forward.
down, please. And you get used to it though. That's the crazy part, is you get used to the style actually pretty quickly and you kind of sink into it. And but then when you get to the actual Trinity detonation sequence, you can tell that specific sequence, Nolan thought extra hard about how he's going to execute it, shoot it, and edit it. Like it was like very specific the way.
I mean, that and
goes out.
probably the last 10 minutes, wrapping everything up, 10, 15
Yeah.
minutes, are the most tour de force examples of editing that they had to put. And he's really gives you the sense. What's amazing about that is how suspenseful it is, even though you know how it's going to go, because you know what happened. And that's the brilliance of it. Because what it does is, instead of asking the audience to feel suspenseful about the bomb, it's putting you subjectively through editing into the character's shoes and their anxieties. And you're communicating via that, again, by scaling it down to express the anxiety that was wrought by birthing the atomic age and the age of atomic warfare. Which and it's also interesting in that scene. So the scientists understand what's happening more than the soldiers. A lot of the soldiers and stuff are just like, "Oh, we got a new bomb, cool," and they're celebrating.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, we were talking about how like he names the first one Trinity, and then once it's handed off to the fucking military, and they call it, what were the two names for him?
Batman and Little Boy.
Yeah, it's just like
Enola Gay. You know, that's who's dropping the bomb. Yeehaw, America. Truman was unlikable in this movie. He's the president. He's riding high off of beating the Nazis, even though he just kind of came in there the last year or so.
Yeah, Gary Oldman must get off on finding the most crazy fucking makeup to have to wear in a movie.
I also think part of the certain actors get reputation for being good in makeup. Ron Perlman says early in his career, he got a reputation as being, because of Beauty and the Beast. It's like, if you need a guy in makeup, he's okay with it. He won't complain. He'll sit there. He'll do his job. So if you want him to dress like a goat for Dr. Moreau, go ahead.
Yeah.
Or Hellboy.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I already
I'll tell your Josh Peck joke.
Yeah, I was like, I already made this joke, but I had an intrusive thought for a lot of this movie because of it. But when you get to the scene where they're about to launch the bomb for the first time, and it's Josh Peck who's in charge of launching the bomb, me, of growing up in the 2000s, big fan of Drake and Josh, I couldn't help but have this. First of all, huge fan of Drake and Josh back in the day. I couldn't help but have this joke running through my mind. It wouldn't leave at all. And it was almost to the point where it's pissing me off, where the idea of like, okay, this intense sequence, and then Josh Peck launches it and it's successful. And then he turns to him and he says, "It's nuclear." Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna turn that to a meme.
People our age cannot take Josh Peck seriously as an actor, which is
and I'm glad he got his little moment in the movie.
But it takes me out. There's a shot of where it shows all the scientists who worked at Los Alamos, and Josh Peck is front, and it just takes me out of the shot.
I was like, what the fuck? I saw similar people on Twitter saying the same thing, but also that
it's nobody's fault. No, and obviously Nolan doesn't have that.
Nolan doesn't fucking give a shit about Drake and Josh.
No, he was just like,
all we know.
Yeah, but he's a massive fan.
But it did make because he also put in a small role, that kid who plays Roderick in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, those movies, which obviously is not our generation's movies. It's more my brother, who's like 12 years younger than me.
Yeah. I wonder
his
if
name-
does Nolan have kids?
I don't
Maybe
know,
his kids
but someone mentioned Roderick, and in one of the press junkets, and Nolan was like, "Yeah, Roderick rules." So I don't know. He obviously knew that kid or that guy playing Roderick, who's a very popular character amongst younger folks. But also that makes me think. I was happy to see two actors that kind of got lost in the shuffle in the 2010s: Dane DeHaan and Alden Ehrenreich, who I both like a lot, and they're great. Both of them are great in this movie. And a lot of people have said that either one or the other has been their favorite supporting actor of the movie, and I'm glad. And it sucks because Alden Ehrenreich, he's good in Solo. It's just Solo's a mediocre movie, and it's a shame that
he's good. He's good in a Coen Brothers movie, Hail Caesar.
Yeah, he's great in that, but Hail Caesar's way better than the movie than Solo. But the thing,
Oh yeah,
Solo's so mediocre. It's not his fault. That would be what's his name? Opie and Kathleen Kennedy. But it's just a shame that a movie like that can cost him work in Hollywood, and it's not his fault.
I think it's a shame for a lot of actors who get blacklisted essentially, or have trouble finding work because of a crappy movie when their performance may have had nothing to do with it.
Right.
That's just the way Hollywood works.
But I'm glad John Boyega, he had a movie come out the same day as these movies called They Clone Tyrone. It's on Netflix. I heard good things. So if you can't go to the movies, go watch his new movie because he deserves to get some recognition too.
Yeah.
And I hope Daisy Ridley can find where I think she's going to be in a new indie film, but I just feel bad for like shit like that. There's no reason behind it.
No, and I'm also really glad that Cillian Murphy is getting his big leading role.
Yeah, hell
and
yeah.
It works so much better that even though I know his work, he's not super famous. So I'm saying if you had someone more famous, you wouldn't. Let's say Matt Damon, who is excellent in this movie, and it's the first time I've seen him in a role as military brass, and he plays it very well. He's to the audience, he is annoying because he's such a belligerent man, but he has the job of helping spearhead the Manhattan Project for the war effort. He's stressed out, understandably.
Yeah.
As he says at one point, why? Because this is the most important thing that's ever happened in the history of the fucking world. Which is hyperbolic, because I know in interviews, Nolan is like, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the most important man to ever live. I'm like, well, I don't know, like Jesus was important, and Muhammad.
That's
was
your
important.
your big example.
Jesus, yeah. There's 13 Crusades or whatever. That was all Jesus, man.
That was all Jesus.
Well, if Christianity hadn't existed.
Okay. So now we're getting into an alternate universe where Scott believes in Jesus Christ.
I believe the historical Jesus.
Okay. Well,
I'm just saying there's other people in the 20th century also important. Like, I don't know. Einstein's equally as important because it's all standing on the shoulders of giants.
I'd say Ridley Scott, 20th century. He made Blade Runner and Alien. That's
he's more
pretty important. Which actually I did read that, or I heard Nolan talking about how inspirational Ridley Scott. He loves Ridley Scott, so
that makes sense to me. I can see Nolan really digging Ridley,
which
Scott.
is cool as fuck.
They're both pretty technical filmmakers, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people are heralding this as his best film. I'm not sure if it is his best film, but it's definitely his most mature film.
Yes, and it's definitely, I would say,
it's up there.
It's up there first. It's the upper quartile, shall we say, of Nolan movies.
Sure.
I need another watch, but I would say he is back on the level of the late 2000s golden age Nolan, that sort of area. His stint with, Memento, Prestige, Batman, Inception.
Yeah,
I would put this more in that category.
Yeah,
than in Dunkirk and Interstellar.
And I know young folks love Interstellar and claim it to be a masterpiece, but this movie is better than Interstellar.
Yeah, that movie has problems, even though I enjoy it.
Yeah.
No, this movie, at least on a first watch, I don't really have any criticisms. I mean,
No,
I
yeah.
guess my criticism could be it's almost overwhelming in the amount of information it has, but I don't know how else you could tell the story.
But also pacing, no matter what the movie is, usually the pacing is always better the second time you watch it.
Absolutely, for sure.
I am interested to see how it plays now that I've seen it, which I was already fine with to begin with. It just took some getting used to, like, oh shit. And we this whole episode we haven't even talked about Robert Downey Jr. That's how much shit there is, you know.
Oh yeah, there's other characters like Rami Malek's in the. It's almost distracting how many bit characters are played by famous actors. Benny Safdie, his character is Hungarian, not Russian, by the way, but you know, same thing.
Yeah, so many characters would pop up. I'm like, I didn't even know you were in the fucking cast, like Benny Safdie. And I was like, holy
yeah,
shit.
I think I'd read he was in the cast, and then Rami Malek's in there, and he has one line, and you're like, why is Rami Malek in this? And he turns out being more important later, but it's almost off-putting. And there's an entire framing device with Robert Downey Jr. That comes together in the end. You're almost like, how important is this? And you're like, oh, this is why this is important.
Yeah,
because he's representative of how the government and society treated Oppenheimer after the fact. And although this movie is overall, I would say, charitable toward Oppenheimer, it's not without criticizing him, painting him as an incredibly complicated man. And I do wonder what historians' reactions in the coming weeks will be to this movie. Even though I think this movie functions fine, but I wonder if certain Oppenheimer scholars will be like, this was very accurate of a portrayal. This part was a bit more Hollywood. But it seems to me like any sort of Nolan, at least my sense is, definitely wanted to be accurate to the story, but also to the emotionality of his life and any narrative. Like, I'm sure there's probably some narrative contrivances or kind of tweaks that they did to just make things flow better. But I think at this point, even most historians who comment on movies kind of understand with Hollywood, like, yeah, sometimes you have to, you know, make certain tweaks to history to make things
right. But also, he did adapt it from that book.
A book, yeah.
What are you gonna do? And
it's like, it's funny, like, I don't know. It's like Hamilton. You read a book, and one guy makes Hamilton, another guy reads an autobiography and makes Oppenheimer. It's interesting how people's minds work.
And we want to shout out my boy Robert Pattinson for handing this book to Nolan, thinking, hey, you know, this might be a book you'd be interested in. And then Nolan was like, I'm very much interested in this.
Yeah. I wonder if Nolan says, like, I'm like Oppenheimer because I'm a misunderstood genius.
No,
he doesn't seem that way.
That would be
actually I heard an interview with him. He was talking to some guy on the radio that talked about his comfort movies that whenever they're on TV, he has to put the remote down. And one of them he said was Talladega Nights. He was like, Nolan loves that movie. He's like, he's
awesome.
Like, you're not first, you're last. He says it on which makes me appreciate him more.
Because Nolan is a fucking weird man who only uses mostly analog technology and doesn't own a cell phone and is never like on social media. Well, I get not being on social media. Cillian Murphy's the same way. But like not having a cell phone, having to, like Cillian Murphy said, like he had to call Nolan's wife, and then his wife had to hand him the phone and shit. Like, what the fuck? Like, what a weirdo.
Yeah, no, like it's 1990.
Yeah, and it's like, whatever, man. I mean,
I honestly with that almost see, if you're a big director, that's a way of controlling how many people can get at you. Because he's in his head about, I want to make this damn movie, and I have the clout to do it without having to listen to every note that the studio gives me.
Yeah.
And if I want people to contact me, that's an easier way to filter it. Because then at least my wife can be like, oh, he's not home, wink, wink.
Yeah. Like, that's so like classic, like, I don't know, suburban household. Like, oh, he's not home.
That's just how, yeah, that's
it's
how
just on a much bigger level.
Yeah. He doesn't want to be contactable at all times.
Yeah, but also he just like, he's so weird and analog. But I don't know. I get not wanting to be on social media, but part of me like wants to stay culturally relevant.
I'm sure he has aides that keep him up to date on what's happening. And I'm sure he still reads stuff on the internet. Like,
I know.
I'm sure he reads the news and he obviously watches movies.
Yeah. I wonder
what he thinks of Barbie.
Yeah, well,
I bet he likes it.
Well, the thing is that he left Warner Bros. Because of the shit surrounding Tenet, which is kind of it's shitty on Warner Bros. End, but it's also kind of shitty on his end of him not being able to like just recognize that people are not ready to go back to the theaters yet in 2021 for Tenet.
People weren't fully ready.
They weren't ready, and he should have let them push it back, I think. But he was being an ornery fuck, and I'm not here to say what's what. COVID was a weird time for everybody in different ways, but it is kind of shitty that Warner Bros. Was petty enough to plan Barbie for the same day release as his new movie with a different studio.
Oh, you think that was intentional?
Oh,
you think David Zaslav was trying to sabotage it and it backfired?
No, I'm not saying sabotage. It was just petty, and
it's
that is the one negative thing behind Barbenheimer. It's like the reason this happened is because Warner Bros. Wanted to be petty.
Well, Warner Bros. Discovery has been making enough stupid decisions recently with the rebranding of Max and the gutting of Turner Classic Movies and all the crap that they're giving writers for striking to get a living wage.
Yeah.
We'll see. We're at a very interesting turning point in film history.
Yes,
and I'm excited to see.
There's a reason why. These two movies ended up propping each other up, and now they're both making probably more money because of the hype surrounding the event. And it's good for cinema because the Flash flopped, the Furious 10 didn't make as much money as they were hoping at all.
Little Mermaid didn't make as much money as they wanted, even though it still made money.
She still made a lot more money than these other movies. But
is Ariel, chick who played Ariel, same chick who's going to be in Color Purple, the new one?
I don't know. So. I don't know anything.
That looks like interesting just because it's an adaptation of the musical stage play.
I need
to see the original Color Purple. I've read the book. I love the book. Alice Walker's apparently an anti-Semite, which I read, which is incredibly disappointing and also surprising. Yeah, read into it. It's nuts.
I think cinema goers are hungry, and we were sitting in a sold-out IMAX auditorium, which has a lot of seats packed in, which I haven't seen. Where you go on the app and the actual showtime says sold out underneath. I have not seen that since I went and saw Endgame in IMAX.
This is easily
2019,
the most crowd I've seen a theater since pandemic, easily. And I
awesome.
Loved it. It felt like old times. It felt like other big premieres in our life.
Actual substance to chew on,
Yeah, we're still able to talk about it the next day. We're not, it's not Tank Girl.
Just use a different, Indiana Jones. No one other than us thought about Indiana Jones more than one day, and they moved on.
I even I talked a little about the new Mission Impossible. My parents, my brother-in-law. I mean, we were at an event, so we couldn't talk about it a lot. It's a shame that I wish that movie could have gotten
they should have released it either at the beginning of June or a few weeks in August. And it's bizarre that they did this way. Because Mission Impossible 7 is such a fucking awesome, badass action movie that it needs more recognition. It should have had more time in the IMAX, and now it's getting swept.
Yeah, but I still think it's going to make a profit, and they're making that other one I wish it came out in this December, but it comes out in a year, which sucks.
Yeah.
But I think it's funny anyway. The point I brought that up, one of the points is I think it's funny that the writer strike is doing all this stuff. And then this movie that was written and shot in 2019 or something, AI is the bad guy, and it's weirdly prescient even just for a couple years later.
Yeah.
So it's going to be such an early 20s movie. Not that this is a Mission Impossible podcast, but
yeah,
it's a good movie too.
Yeah, but it's like Mission Impossible and Oppenheimer and Barbie all left me at the end thinking about important things.
And what a good summer movie is. And those are all three.
Yeah, all three are like what
Oppenheimer could have easily been a December release, but it's all three are excellent, auteur driven. I mean, I wouldn't say Mission Impossible is completely auteur driven, but I think the McQuarrie Tom Cruise partnership is obviously those results.
It's insane that just the name Christopher Nolan can put people in the seats now, because we've had such a disconnect lately, especially with actors. Like, people know Superman, they don't know Henry Cavill, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like this big disconnect. the death of the movie star, et cetera, et cetera. And more now, I feel like we're starting to get a resurgence of knowing directors, and it's, to me, it's like now Greta Gerwig, because of Barbie, is going to join the names of Nolan, Tarantino, people that from a different era of film that started in a different era can still put butts in seats because of their names that newer directors may not be able to because of all the franchise films that have been coming.
I'm very excited to see what Greta Gerwig will make next, because this is really her proving point that she can make essentially a blockbuster. Narnia?
She's getting signed on to do, I think, Magician's Nephew, I think.
Oh, really?
Which to me would be sick, because that one gets kind of abstract with the creation of Narnia and shit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't like it as much because of that.
I want her to do more, smaller pictures first before that. She hasn't even started, writing or anything. But Narnia needs to be more quaint. It needs to be like, it doesn't need to be PG Lord of the Rings. It all of the scenes in the books are these intimate kind of like atmospheric moments that are kind of dreamy and kind of very character focused, and not supposed to be like, it's different. It's just different from the Lord of the Rings movies.
All right, I hold on. I'm going to turn this around to my other mom. Well, it's Laura looking at porn, and now my mic's all messed up.
That's good.
Basically, if you Google Greta Gerwig, purple sparkles go all over the Google page, and you can't read anything. It's very distracting. Okay.
Oh yeah, I think your mic came unplugged. I think
no big deal. We're about wrapping up here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the problem is that because this became such a phenomenon, now companies are going to try and replicate it, and they're all going to fucking fail, because it's going to be contrived and obviously corporate, and it's just annoying that we're going to have to try and see, we're going to have to deal with that.
A Greta Gerwig James Bond possibility. I hope not. She doesn't seem like the right director. No offense, Greta.
Wow. Okay. Women can't make James Bond. No, I'm just kidding.
No. I want Dude, I want the male gaze in James Bond. I know that's fucked up, but like,
I want the camp. I want them to bring back a weird, silly.
I actually want some camp. I think it's time to bring back some camp. It doesn't have to be as much as the Connery Bonds or anything.
No, hell, I say put it, make it retro futuristic. Put it in the '60s and have all these goofy contraptions and shit.
I actually like that idea, but kind of play it straight.
Yeah. Oh, play it straight.
Play it like 90% straight, but it's just like weird, made up gadgets and stuff.
Goofy, like tearjerker, like in American Dad. No, but
no, I hope I need to see Francis Ha, but Lady Bird's real good.
Yeah, I do too. That's definitely I like Parker's like worried. She's like, I want to watch Lady Bird, but the clips I've seen from it are really hard to watch for me because of my mom issues. I was like, yeah, but it could be kind of therapeutic, I think, if you watch them.
Yeah. Sounds like she needs to
watch it.
Pull herself up by her bootstraps.
Oh, okay. And then Little Women I really liked. But I do have a soft spot for the 90s Little Women because I grew up watching it, and I like what's her name? Winona Ryder, and I like Christian Bale, you know. But Timothy Chalamet is cool too. But Christian Bale is just kind of, he's got a different screen presence. I don't know. But both adaptations are good. I'm saying like definitely Little Women, Greta Gerwig's version is definitely worth watching if you're into that kind of thing. If you like the book, whatever.
I really don't have any interest in Little Women. I know I should. Like that's
fine.
I just don't care.
I'm a little softer than you when it comes to female literature. No, I'm just kidding.
Are you? That's not true.
No, I just grew up with it. That's all.
No. All right. Anything else to add about Barbenheimer?
No. Well, I'm glad cinema's thriving right now, and after all these shitty flops of these mediocre blockbusters, this is a kind of a shining light of hope, and I hope corporations take it the right way, and maybe. I'm
afraid they'll take the wrong lesson of we should have a bunch of branded shit with social media campaigns instead of we should have auteur-driven filmmaking. But
Yeah.
Those who take the right lesson will thrive, and hopefully the market will sort itself out.
The market is sorting itself out with all these flops of these giant fucking movies.
Good.
So let it roll, you know. So thanks for listening, everybody. Next week we'll be back with Red Rocket, which is Sean Baker, who directed Florida Project. And that's go check that episode out if you want.
I would have been on that episode if I knew it would have been one of our most viewed episodes. I was traveling, but then I was like, I would have made time for this. I really like that movie too.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see ya.